Hey, Cornerstone Chapel, good morning. I'm coming to you by video today because Deb and I are actually away on a vacation this week. And even though we're gonna have a blast getting some R&R, I hate being away from our church family. I hate missing Sundays. But you know what? You guys are in great hands because Jesus is here. We have an amazing staff and we have an amazing congregation. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Pastor Mike as he comes and he brings the next message in our series, Dreams to Destiny, on the power test. So if I could just lead everybody right now in welcoming him as he comes. Come on, let's get our hands ready. Come on, let's get ready. Let's get ready to welcome Pastor Mike. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Come on, let's give it up for Pastor Mike as he comes. Woo-hoo! Come on, Pastor Mike. All right.
I love that guy. Hey, I truly am honored to be able to bring the word this morning, but I do want to, if we could, are you guys up for something different? Okay, I have here this little, my wife's camera, and I just want to, if we could, just like do a little video for Pastor Mark, like he's not expecting this, but just like a hooting, hollering, hey, we love you. He's away getting some well-deserved rest and relaxation, and I think he would just really be blessed if we could just give him that same sort of like love. All right, so can we do that? So on the count of 3, can we get ready, get our hands ready? All right, let's tell Pastor Mark how much we love him. We love you, Pastor Mark and Pastor Deb. We miss you guys. We will see you next week. Love you. You guys are awesome. All right, I'm just going to get this real quick back to Mel. And so those of you that were here last week, we're in this series called From Dreams to Destiny, talking about Joseph. And last week, Pastor Mark covered the prophetic test. And so that was all about how essentially Joseph has been given this gift of interpreting dreams, and he was able to speak just essentially what the dreams for Pharaoh we're all about. And so just to kind of get you a little caught up to speed, at this point in Joseph's life, he was in the pit, he was in prison, he's gone through a whole lot of issues. He was in slavery. They said he was probably in slavery from about 13 years, the time that he was a teenager, until he turns about 30 years old. And so he's in prison. He interprets this dream for for Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and baker, interprets the dream accurately. The cupbearer gets out of jail. He forgets about Joseph until one day Pharaoh has this dream that bothers him. He actually has 2 dreams that essentially mean the same thing, but he has these 2 dreams, doesn't know what it's all about, calls all of the magicians to come and interpret what the dream was. They can't do it out, and then Pharaoh's cupbearer remembers, hey, this guy Joseph that I met in prison interpreted one of my dreams, and so he would be able to help you out, Pharaoh. And so essentially Pharaoh tells the dream to Joseph, and Joseph interprets that, yes, these are 2 dreams, but one and the same. And the interpretation of what the dreams were basically that Egypt was going to go through 7 years of plenty. So the harvest was going to be great, and then there was going to be 7 years followed that of famine. And so he encouraged Pharaoh, you need to be able to appoint men, wise people who will be able to oversee during the time of plenty, be able to oversee just the grain and everything that comes in, so that when the time of famine comes, we have enough food. And so we're going to pick up in Genesis 41 right now, verse 37. And we're just going to read a little bit about what Joseph interpreted, and essentially Joseph's rise to power. Today we're talking about the power test, and so this is what it's all about. So beginning Genesis 41, verse 37 says this: the plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has said all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater to you. We're going to stop right there. So what's happening right now is since Joseph was able to interpret this dream to Pharaoh, he's saying, you are the guy, you're the wise man that I want to be able to appoint in such a position of power in Egypt so that you can be the one to help distribute and oversee the year of plenty so that you can help out in the year of famine. And just, I want you there. And so he's not even just saying, hey, I want you on my cabinet or my board of many people. He's saying essentially, I want you to be the vice president. I want you to be my right-hand man. So let's keep going. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in the chariot as his second in command, and men shouted before him, Make way! Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without your word, no one will lift hand or foot in all Egypt. And we'll stop there. And so now you get an idea of how much power Joseph has. Now imagine this. You've been a slave for, again, 13, 14, 15 years, somewhere in there. You spent time in a pit. You spent a lot of time, many years, in a prison. And in one day, you now have this authority, this power. Can you say, wow? Wow. Right. This was mind-blowing, I'm sure, for Joseph. And so let me just say this right now. We've all got power. Can you say this? I've got the power. Say it maybe one more time. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. All right. Say it again. I've got the power. Okay. All right. So, what does it matter? Who cares if you have power? Well, the people who you have power over care. God, who gave you power, cares. There's a great line in the first Spider-Man movie, if you ever saw it, that Peter Parker, who is Spider-Man, he gets bit by a radioactive spider. So if you don't know the story, he gets bit. He starts realizing that he has all these powers. He beats up this kid at school, and his uncle has to have the sit-down talk with him. And he recognizes that Peter's changing, and he says this to him. He says, with much power comes great responsibility. So with great power comes great responsibility. Acknowledging that not he didn't know that Peter Parker was going to become Spider-Man. He didn't know he had that kind of a power, but he was just making the statement that with great power comes great responsibility. Andy Stanley said this at a leadership conference one time. He said, leadership is stewardship, and you're accountable. And so if we look at power real quick, I believe that power equals influence. So if you have some sort of power in your life over yourself or over people, you have influence. And so it depends on how well you respect and treat that power that you've been given. And I would also go on to say that power is stewardship. And that's what we're going to talk about, because essentially we all have been given power to some degree in our life. What are you doing with it? How well are you treating it? Jesus, when he was standing before Pilate. Now imagine Jesus, he's on trial, he's been beaten a few times, he's bloodied. He's standing there before Pilate, and they're not in front of the crowd, they're kind of removed a little bit. And Pilate is having this conversation to Jesus, and he says this in John 19. He says, are you not speaking to me? Do you not know that I have power to crucify you and power to release you? Jesus answered, you could have no power at all against me unless it had been given to you from above. So where does Jesus acknowledge power? Where does it come from? From above. David said in Psalm 62, God has spoken once, twice I have heard this, that power belongs to God. So just recognize that any bit of power that you have in your life, any bit of influence that you have in your life, that has come from where? It's come from God. And so when we look at power today and we look at authority, and we're not talking about obviously power when it comes to strength and might, but influence and authority. We're going to turn real quick to Matthew 25, and you can follow on the screens here. And we're going to look at the parable of the talents. And this essentially is this man, just kind of set you up, this man is going on a journey. And so before he leaves for his journey, he gives to 3 of his servants different portions of money. To one, he gives, I think, 5 bags of silver, another 2, another 1. And it's up to them to do something with that. And so we're going to pick up in verse 19. Or are we in 14? We'll go with 14. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more bags. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, and good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvested where I have not sown and gathered where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I return I would have received it back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken away from them, and throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And so we see this principle of stewardship, that when we've been given something, there's a requirement that we do something with what we've been given. And so right now, I want to take maybe 2 minutes. You have on the back of the bulletin a place to write if you would like, or if you have another place where you take notes. I want you to write 3 to 5, at least 3, if not 5 things that you have power over. Now, let me explain. If you're a parent, you have power over your kids, authority, influence. If you are on staff, you have at a job, if you're a boss, if you're a manager, if you have oversight in any area, you have power over those in which you oversee. If you're an elected official somewhere, or if you serve somewhere, you have power, you have influence, you have authority over those who are under you. So if you could, maybe just take, 2 minutes, 3 to 5 things, write it down, make it personal. So we're just going to play a little bit of music in the background while you do that.
With all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. Don't worry about tomorrow. He's got it under control. Just trust in the Lord with all your heart, and He will carry you through. Lord, sometimes it gets so
Okay, about maybe 30 more seconds.
to keep my eyes on you when things are going rough.
All right.
When I turn my
So if you think of anything else, you can go up there throughout the service and write it down. But the reason that I wanted you to do that is, as we go a little further into the message here, I want you to have that in front of you so that you can continue to kind of refer back to it, so that you could sort of measure yourself. How well am I doing with, whatever you wrote down? So consider for a second a question to ask yourself. Really, how well are you treating that power that you've been given? So the place or the position that you have in life, whether you're married, single, you have kids, no kids, wherever you are in your job, how well are you stewarding the power that God has given you? And why do you think God has given you that? If you have kids, why did God give you kids? If you're single at this moment, why are you single at this moment in your life? This quote that I found will kind of give you a little bit of indication, at least kind of get you in the right direction as far as the purpose. Robert Morris says that every time God promotes us or gives us a position of influence, it is because he has people in mind. He has someone in mind, someone he wants us to minister to. So whatever influence or authority or power that you have in your life, it's not about you. It's not for you. It's not for your ego. It's not for your own gain, your own wealth, but it's for other people. And so we're going to look at 5 things this morning, areas in which we need to steward. And even if you're young here and you're like, man, I'm 10 years old, I'm 12 years old, what do I have power over? You should have at least had one thing that you put on there. And the first thing that I want to look at this morning is that God desires that we steward ourselves. How many of you guys put that down as one of them? Right on. God requires that you are a good steward of the temple, what he has given us. Recently, I want to brag on my wife here, because one of the areas in which I believe that we need to be good stewards is in stewarding ourselves. It has to do with our health. And so I was getting a physical at the doctor's, and he was just asking questions, and so I was telling him like what all was going on with our family and stuff. And for those of you who don't know my wife, she's right here. You can say, hey, Mel. So Melanie, about a year and a half ago, was diagnosed pre-diabetic. So if things didn't change in her diet, she was going to become diabetic eventually. And so the doctor said, you can work on this. You can change your eating habits. You could exercise more, and you can reverse this. And so for the next year, I don't think she drank pop once. She got rid of, most fast food. So we as a family started eating better. There was a lot of vegetables in the house, and she was working out a lot. She was running. And so a year after she was diagnosed, she goes back to the doctors, and turns out she was not diabetic, nor was she pre-diabetic. So she reversed all of that, which was pretty awesome. Yeah, you can just give it up for her. And so I just love how she just was like, I'm going to do this. Because the doctor, when I told him this, he's like, that's pretty amazing, because out of the hundreds of people that I diagnosed pre-diabetic, 5% of them actually reverse it. Like 95% just say, Doc, just give me the pill. I'm allergic to exercise. I'm not going to change what I eat, so just give me the pill. And so the fact that she was able to do that. So God wants us to steward ourselves physically, exercise, eating right, rest, having right hobbies and such, but also mentally too. Like, how's your thought life? Like, and I'm not just talking like purity or whatever, but I'm talking about like, do you hold on to grudges? Does like somebody offend you and you just in your mind, you're just like stewing on that? Like, man, I can't believe they did that. And you're just going over the scenario over and over and over again, and you can't let it go. Are you pessimistic? Like, what does it matter? It's all going to end, right? I knew this lady that I worked with, and years ago we were teenagers, and I'd go up to just say, hey, how you doing? And she would just like, life stinks, guys stink. Okay, I'm going to go this way. I did not want to be around this girl because she was always like, doom and gloom. And so what's your thought life like? How you doing with that? How you stewarding that? Romans 12 says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is God's will, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And so if you're out there in the world at all, you know that it's not getting any better. The world is the world, and there's so much that we can get discouraged by and frustrated with, and you just can't let that bother you. It's so easy to like carry this stuff, but God's like, no, man, renew your mind, get into the Word. Last week, the other thing that we need to focus on is how are you doing it spiritually? And I'm not going to focus much on that because Pastor Mark did a fantastic job of that last week. And so if you didn't get to hear the message, I would go online, cornerstonechapel.org, listen to his message, because I thought he did a great job just talking about how we hear from the Lord and ways in which we can hear from the Lord. He focused on withdrawing and the need for us to withdraw, and think about how many areas you're plugged in, like to the world, like Facebook and all that stuff. I could totally like relate with what he was saying about doing like the devotions on your phone. Like there's times where it's like, I'll put the worship music going on my phone, so I got worship music, and I'm doing the devos that are on YouVersion, and then all of a sudden, boom, I get a text message or an email, and now I'm just distracted, and so sometimes we just need to withdraw and unplug. The second thing I want to focus on is God desires that we steward our time. And now I'm not referring to, like, I'm not saying that binge watching on Netflix is horrible, and I'm not going that direction with time, although that's probably part of it. But when it comes to like time, how often are you in the moment? Have you ever heard the term be in the moment? Like what that is referring to is just be aware. Pastor Jeff used to always say how we have it backwards. Oftentimes, instead of working at our work and playing at our play, we play at our work and we work at our play. And so we cross the lines too much. But what we need to just understand that when it's time to work, okay, we work. When it's time for relaxation, leisure, play, we play. We don't focus on work. We are in the moment wherever we are. And so this got me thinking about Queen Esther. And Esther, amazing character, Queen of Persia. She was Jewish. Her husband, people didn't know that. And to make a long story short, there was a decree that went out basically saying that all Jews were to be annihilated. She finds out from her uncle Mordecai. And Mordecai essentially says this, essentially you're Jewish right now, and you have the power and the position to be able to go to your husband and turn this around, this decree that went out. You can change this. And so he makes this comment, and he says that, for if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise from the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Think about your job for a moment. Or think about your kids at home, and maybe they're going through some serious stuff. For such a time as this, God chose that you would be that kid's parent. For such a time as this, God put you in this place at work so that you could be a change maker for his kingdom. Maybe you're even in like a work environment or some environment where you overhear something that it's not right. Well, maybe for such a time as that, God placed you there so that you would hear that and then do something about it. And if we're just thinking about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, we're going to miss the present and what God is trying to do right now. 2 Timothy, Paul says this to Timothy. He says, preach the word, be ready in season and out of season. So Timothy, not just when you're preparing a message, be in season, but like when you're even just like living life, be ready to share the gospel. So how many of us are like fully aware, like during the moment, like there's more at stake. You're at the job that you're at right now. You're not just there to make a paycheck. You're there to make a difference for the kingdom of God. And there's a reason for such a time as this that God has you there. And so be in the moment. The third thing is God desires that we steward our actions. And this is where it gets ugly. Last weekend, my wife and I, we went to, and the family, we went to Chicago. Yay, Chicago. Love that city. My brother lives in Joliet, and so every time we go out there, we always try to find at least one or two where we can go downtown and we can just kind of hang out and see the sights and stuff like that. So last Thursday, after work, we picked up the kids. We drove out there. We got to Chicago by 9 o'clock, and so the first thing that we had to do after we checked in was we had to get pizza, right? So Giordano fans of Chicago, you know what I'm talking about? Okay. So we got some pizza. Then after pizza, we go back to the hotel room because we're just done. We are just tired. And so it's about 11:30 or so. And, we're getting all settled in, getting the kids in bed, and we just have people outside, like, the hallways, like, running amok. Have you ever been in a hotel room and you've been in that situation where you got people loud either next door or in the hallway and they don't understand, like, common, like, courtesy of, like, keep it down after 11 o'clock? And so we're just talking, well, eventually they're going to stop. It's going to get quiet eventually. Yeah, right. And my wife, who out of the two of us, she is the smarter one of the bunch. So I'll definitely just kind of put that up out there. And so, it's about probably midnight or so about that time, and I fall asleep, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom! Like, I just hear this loud, like, bang, and I wake up, and I'm what's going on? And so I'm not like thinking clearly. And so Mel's like, okay, well, we just need to maybe call the front desk because, we got kids, we need sleep. We'll just call the front desk and they'll deal with it. But I'm like, no. Like, I am going to do something about this. I'm going to take matters in my own hands. And so I'm in my PJs. I come out of the door, go down the hallway because I know kind of where the noise is at. And when I get to the door to where I recognize the noise coming from, the door is already open and there's like a bunch of teenagers just kind of hanging out, having a good time or whatever. And so there's one guy with his back turned towards me as I'm in the hallway, and there's another guy kind of looking at him as he's talking, as they're having this conversation. And I could pick up, even though I was tired, I just woke up, I'm angry, so I'm seeing red, I'm frustrated, I'm not thinking clearly. I had it enough in my mind to recognize that these guys are speaking with a foreign accent, but they're speaking very good English, and I could pick up their German. But for whatever reason, I thought even though they're speaking clearly, they need hand motions from me to help them understand what I'm trying to convey in my frustration. And so as the guy turns around, I'm just like, you are loud talking. I have 3 kids. They're sleeping. You be quiet. Shush. And so like the hand motions are just like going at this guy. And so I turn around and I leave and I go to bed, and I don't realize what a jerk I made myself out to be the night before. It didn't process. So I know somewhere in Germany, some teenager is telling his friends about this crazy short American in his PJs using the hand motions to convey how upset I was that they were being loud. And so, in thinking about that whole scenario, I thought, I need to look up the fruits of the Spirit here. And I want to put myself just publicly on display here, and I need you guys to help me where maybe I've missed the mark and how well I did. So, the fruit of the Spirit is love. Missed that one. Joy, not at midnight after you've traveled for 6 hours. Peace was out the 14th floor window of the Red Roof Inn. Absolutely not. Patience, are you kidding me? Kindness, no. Gentleness, no. Faithfulness, goodness, self-control, absolutely not. I missed the mark on every single one of those. Has anybody ever done that before, or is it just me? Yeah. So my actions, we got to realize that when we steward our actions, it's not only action, but it's also reaction. So it's like offense and defense. I was the offense. I'm coming out of the room, and I'm just like, I'm just frustrated doing my hand motions and everything. And so that was my actions. But what about like our reactions too, which I think sometimes can be far worse. Somebody like says something about you, something negative, something offensive, something even done out of love and respect towards you, and you just turning around in your head and it's like, what are you talking about? So if I could redeem myself, may I? I had a situation here maybe about a month ago. And, from time to time I'll come up here and I'll close out the service and everything. And it was one of those Sundays where I closed out the service and I prayed and did everything. And so as I'm coming down the steps, I see this gentleman who I just love and respect coming towards me. So, of course, I'm thinking, he's going to come and tell me what an amazing job I just did up there, Even though it was like 2 minutes, he's going to come and just like encourage me. And so the first thing out of his mouth is, hey, Pastor Mike, have you ever considered like taking communication courses to speak clearly? No, but this is okay because the way that he did it was just so graciously, so lovingly. And he had said this. When you're up there, you need to maybe enunciate a little more, slow down your speech, clearly communicate what you have to say, and so on and so forth. And him saying this, I absolutely love and respect this guy for saying. Now, granted, there was that like split second where I'm just like, I do this for a living. What are you talking about? And I was just like, but that was a split second. Because the reality of this guy saying this, other people have told me that before. Like some of you have said that to me, hey, Pastor Mike, we want to hear what you have to say. Just got to slow it down a little bit. Just stop trailing off in your sentences, which is another encouragement that he gave me. And so when he said this, I received this like, okay, this is correction, but if I want to get any better about what I do up here, I need to receive that, because not only is he telling me that, other people have said that to me before. I've thought that before. Melanie has told me that before. And just to for God to hit me upside the head, like that week with like a baseball bat. I got a phone call later that week, and I was playing phone tag with a parent that attends our youth group, or student attends the youth group, and so she called, I called back, left a message. She calls again and says, "Hey, Pastor Mike, I really couldn't understand what you were saying when you left the message. Your sentences kept dropping off, and I don't know if you're like breaking up or what exactly was going on there." And so it was like, boom, yeah, that's it, And so, how many of you guys like receiving correction? Some of you, maybe. All right. But the reality is this: we have to receive that. I don't care how old you are, how young you are, we have to be willing to hear what others have to say. When they're coming at you purely motivated, humbly, just like this man was, just like the woman on the phone was, we need to be willing to receive that. 1 Peter 5 says, "Likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders, clothe yourself with all of you with humility towards one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you." Now, I feel like with that, I was able to take that correction. Even I went as far as to writing in bold, red at the top, "Slow down, speak clear. Don't drop off on your sentences." And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, as Christians, we need to be willing to. But it's so often our nature to turn the tables. When somebody comes to us, I had that split second where he came to me and he just lovingly corrected me, where I just wanted to be like, "Don't you know I do this for a living? What are you talking about?" And just like react and turn it back on him, and why would you say this? And that's often what we do. We turn it back on something else. We want to blame somebody else for the reason why we did what we did, or so on and so forth. And we just need to humble ourselves and receive. Amen? All right. The last one I want to look at, and it's kind of twofold, and that has to do with stewarding your resources and your talents. We're going to start off in Luke, so if you want to turn to Luke 21. Luke 21. I'll give you a minute to get there. Luke 21, verse 1. And this is Jesus. And as he looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the treasury, and he saw also a certain poor woman putting in 2 mites, so he said, "Truly I say to you that this poor widow has put in more than all. For all these out of their abundance have put in offerings for God. But she out of her poverty put in all the livelihood that she had." So we've got this woman who was putting money into the treasury, doesn't have much. From world's standards, it's 2 pennies essentially is what she's given in the offering, compared to the rich who had abundance, put it in their abundance. And so Jesus said she actually is giving more than these other guys, because out of her poverty, she's giving way more. And so when it comes to our resources or our talents, we need to think about this. How well, first off, what have you been given? What are your resources? I'm not necessarily talking about money, but it might apply to you. You might just have stuff. You might just have a lot of land where you could use it to bless. I have no idea. But with what has been given to you, how well are you using that to further God's kingdom, to bless other people? Because again, it's not about us. It's about others. With what we've been given, it's about blessing others. So with what you have, how well have you been blessing? Now again, I don't want to put a number on this, because what this woman had wasn't really anything, really wasn't much. But she gave all that she could. And so you might be like, I don't really have a whole lot of stuff, but you've got something to give. And God honors whatever you have, big or small. He honors that because he knows your situation. He knows where you're at. He knows the sacrifice. So what do you have that you're given to other people, to use to bless other people? And then talents. This church is full of talented people. I've seen it. I've met you. I've got to see your talents at work. And I just ask you, what talents do you have, and how are you using them for God's kingdom? And I'm not just saying like here at church, although we could use some help in certain areas, certain ministries here at Cornerstone Chapel. I'm not going to deny that fact. And if you're interested in helping out, hey, I know a guy. I'll get you connected. All right. But aside from that, where even in this world, in your family, in your job, are you able to use the gifts that you have to bless other people? Or are you hoarding that to yourself? Are you just hanging on to that? Because again, it's not about what we can have, what we can gain, but it's about giving to others. And when I think about this whole concept of giving and talents and resources and people stepping into that, I think of a puzzle. How many of you guys like doing puzzles? I'm a puzzle guy. I love puzzles. And how many of you have worked on a puzzle for like a month? It just sits there in like one of the rooms in the house. So it sits there for like a month or 2 months, and you just kind of work at it whenever you can. Like, how frustrating is it when you get to the end of the puzzle and there's a piece missing? Are you kidding me? Where's that piece? And I think that especially like when it comes to like serving at the church in whatever capacity, it's like I believe that the church, obviously, it's the body coming together, and everybody needs to play the part. And so it's almost like looking at that puzzle piece and not having, you know that there's something just kind of askew. You know we know that we can be doing certain things better. We could be more fruitful at doing certain things better, but we're missing the puzzle piece. We're missing somebody's gifts. We're missing somebody's involvement and somebody just sacrificing their life and stepping forward. And I'm going to just throw it out there. It looks, attending like a small group, I think, is you completing part of a puzzle. Because, again, you have gifts, you have questions, you have thoughts that others would be blessed about from here. And it would be blessed with being a part of a small group, or it's you stepping up, serving somewhere, whether in a church or in a community. So how well are you using the gifts, the resources that God has given you? It's kind of like eating some sort of a soup without seasoning or any spices, it just becomes bland. You realize you got flavor? Say, I got flavor. I got flavor. Put you in the big pot, you're going to spice something up, man. You're going to make it complete. So as we just begin to kind of conclude this, I just want to throw out this thought. So the whole concept of the parable of the talent, it's all mathematical, okay? So if you have 5, you use 5 to make 10, right? If you have 3, you use 3 to make 6. Simple mathematics, all right? So that makes sense to me because that's kind of like a formula, okay? I get that. But when we look at Joseph's life, what did Joseph have? What did he have? Nothing. Joseph literally had nothing. Even the coat that he owned was ripped off him when he was thrown into the pit. He had no family. He had nothing. He was a slave. So he's serving in this house. And then he's in prison. And he's serving in the prison. So if we were to put these 5 things kind of into practice, Joseph was really good about stewarding himself. When you think about it, physically he was able to do the jobs that he was appointed to do. Mentally, just stop there for a second. How many of you have ever been thrown into a pit by your brothers, by somebody who loves you? Like, imagine the emotional baggage that Joseph could have been carrying. Like, Joseph could have been just sitting back completely useless and angry. He could have become an angry person because of what was done to him. But we don't read about Joseph like beating up servants in Potiphar's house just because he's got this anger that he's been holding on to since a kid because of what was done to him. Somewhere along the line, he just let that go. And we don't see him sitting in a corner crying and depressed because of what was done to him. He was serving. He did not allow his past to define him. He got over that. He gave that to God. And wherever he was, there was something about Joseph that first off Potiphar said, there's something about that guy that I like. There's something different about him. Now the Egyptians, they had different gods that they would serve. They weren't serving the God of the Jews, but they noticed that God is blessing him. God is in him. God is doing something in him, whatever that meant to them. Potiphar's like, I need that guy right here next to me. There's something different about him. So what else do you think Potiphar would have seen? He was a servant. Joseph was humble, integral. What else? Just throw it out there. Honorable. Anybody else? Faithful, loyal. Joseph was all these things. Joseph had nothing, but Joseph was all of these things. And when we look at how he stewarded his time, well, wherever he was, he apparently did the best that he could do because God blessed him. People saw in Joseph something that was different than the rest of the servants, and they appointed him. It's amazing. Actions. He stewarded his actions. Well, how? We could probably say that the first test, the pit test that Joseph went through, that was his fault. He had that one coming. But the 9 tests after that, not his fault, man. The prison test, he didn't do it. He didn't touch Potiphar's wife. He didn't sleep with Potiphar's wife. He did everything he could to resist her, yet he got accused for doing it. But yet, what do we see in his attitude? Is he sitting in a jail cell, sulking, angry, upset, causing fights, depressed because of what was done to him? Absolutely not. He's serving. That way, the keeper of the jail is like, there's something about that guy. I want him right here serving right next to me. I want him taking care of all of this. And when it comes to resources and talents, like, what is that? How did Joseph use that? Well, Joseph had a dream when he was 17 that someday he would be a ruler of sorts to the point of his brothers, his family essentially bowing down to him. Now, if you've not read the rest of the book of Joseph, this is a spoiler alert. Everything that Joseph dreamed about happens. Right now, Joseph is in the midst of his whole destiny, his whole purpose, the reason why God had him go through all this stuff. It's happening. He's now stepping into the position that God had called him to be at. And he did not allow all this stuff, beginning back with his brothers, to define his future. He was better than that. He was going to go above that. And so even when it came to his gifts, he's got this gift of interpretation. He sees this cupbearer, this baker in the jail who are all sad and whatever's going on, frustrated. He doesn't know. He walks into the situation. Hey, guys, what's going on? Tell me your problems. Well, we've had this dream, and it's bothering us. We don't know what to make of it. Well, tell me the dream, because I can interpret dreams. So even in prison, he's using his gifts. Not only is he just serving and being integral and doing all the right things, but he's actually using his gifts, his God-given gifts. So in just bringing this to a close, I just want to encourage you. Steward what God has given you. And whatever you wrote down on there, always go back and evaluate and measure and saying, how well am I doing with what he's given me? How well are my actions and my reactions? What are my gifts? What are my resources? What in the world am I doing with those? So if we could everybody, if you wouldn't mind, just closing your eyes and bowing your head. We're just going to take a moment to pray for you guys. If any of those 5 things kind of stuck out, where you're like, man, you know what? My actions, my reactions are horrible. I need to work on that. Or you're saying, God, what are my talents? What are the resources? What am I supposed to do with these things? How am I supposed to take care of these and use them for other people, to benefit other people? If it's time and you just need to work on your time and not be focusing on the next thing and the next thing, but you just need to be in the moment and stewarding your time better. If any of these things stuck out to you, would you just wouldn't mind maybe slipping your hand up so I can pray for you? If that's you, Lord Jesus, I thank you. I thank you that you give us your word. You don't condemn us, but you use it for correction, to correct our behaviors, to correct and show us how we're supposed to live. And Lord, that's, I hope, is just how this message is received, of how we can be better stewards of what we've been given. And so for those that raise their hands, Lord, I pray that this week that you would help them to be very intentional of putting into practice, stewarding well what you've given. And if maybe for some, if we haven't really figured out just yet, maybe it's someone here who has resources or a talent, a gift, and they're just not sure maybe what it is or what to do with it. God, I ask that you would just speak to them, that you would show them. Lord, Joseph, he had nothing, but it was his character. It was how he responded, his behavior, his integrity that brought him to the place of prominence in fulfilling his destiny and purpose. And so, Lord, I ask that you would help us this week.